And hey, everybody. I am here with Aaron Chapman, and we are pals from the internet, and we've done some birding together in New York, and it's been super cool. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Eight of Swords, but also pretty specifically chimney swifts and how they kind of interact. So, Aaron, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. This is really exciting. I'm a big fan of the deck and of your work, so really happy to be here. I'm also a big fan
Thanks.
of chimney swifts.
And tell me why. What's your connection to chimney swifts?
So I think I'd say two reasons. One, when I was a kid growing up in Florida, I grew up in a house that my grandparents built, and it's a very old home, and so it has still had chimneys. That's how it was heated. So I actually had a fireplace in my bedroom, and which is unusual, I think, but we never used it. It never worked. So it was a really common chimney swift nesting area. So definitely when I was a kid, at night during nesting season, you could hear the babies sort of doing their chirp calls and begging for food. And at least on one occasion, and I'm pretty sure on several, we had juveniles would fall down into my bedroom at night, and just the ones that I remember could fly. So they would just, flutter around the room at night, and I don't have a memory of it being scary, but just of a sort of exciting almost, a thing that happened. And I guess they were old enough where we just released it outside. I do know, if they're still very small, juvenile chimney swifts can't really survive on their own outside. So some people that I know have put them back into sort of like above the flue, back up in the chimney, and that's sort of the best thing you can do. So that's my first connection, is just I have really strong memories of them as a kid. And then secondly, I would say, I started bird watching in New York City in earnest maybe a couple years ago. And so during the pandemic, New York City was really on lockdown, and I couldn't really go out to the parks the way that I used to. And I don't really live within walking distance of any big parks. And we live in just a 1-bedroom apartment. It's not huge. We don't have a car. So especially during the time when there was the curfew in place in New York City, we would just go up to the roof of our building, which technically we're not supposed to do, probably, but we're the only ones on the top floor, so I don't think anyone else would know. And we would just go up there and see the swifts circling and circling, and we loved being up there to watch the sun go down. And you'd see them sort of come slowly, just sort of funneling in down to people's chimneys and down into rooftops all over the neighborhood. And they have that beautiful little data stream type of chippering that they do, and it just sounds like they're just like gathering all the information of the day and kind of like spitting it back out really quickly. And I just love them so much, and I loved that, and that felt just comforting and beautiful and nice, and like the small slice of nature that we had and could see, that I really treasured and enjoyed that. So yeah.
That's super beautiful. I love that. Now, chimney swifts, what did they do before there were chimneys?
So they nested in hollow trees, and from my understanding, they actually probably experienced kind of a surge in population when Western colonization moved in, because then there were forms of building that included chimneys, which were great for them. But as times have changed and heating your house with a chimney has fallen out of favor, their habitat, and also as old growth forests have been increasingly cut down, their numbers have been really in decline. So I think they're considered a common bird in steep decline. So, and their numbers have actually declined by, I think, like 70% since the 60s. So that you'll still see them. They're still very frequent, but they're just not around as much as they used to be when I guess the peak of chimney construction was going on.
That's amazing. So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think another thing that has happened, people that do have chimneys, a lot of times, a lot of places are required to have a cap on them. So that has also, even if you still have a chimney, the swifts might not be able to get inside. So I know what some people do is keep it capped for the winter and the season in which it's in use. But during the spring and summer, you can actually have the cap taken off and just close the flue in the inside of the chimney. And that way they can still nest inside.
That's really cool. I hope people think about that and try to do that. That sounds awesome. I have to go and look at mine. So do you use the cards at all? Do you use the deck for, can you tell me kind of how you use it or what you use it for?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love to use it in a way. I think maybe you had a post about this at one point where you talked about laying cards out and seeing them as an ecosystem and as an interconnected way of looking at things. So again, over the past year, just been really trying to connect to nature in different ways that rather than direct way, the sort of obvious ways of getting out into it that I used to be able to do so much more frequently. So just sort of dealing out the cards and laying them out and thinking about the ways that things are connected to one another and the ways that eco webs work was really beautiful to me. And I'm really got into, I do have one visual aid. I have this
Nice.
book, which is like a reprint. I'm probably backwards. It's called The Handbook of Nature Study by this woman, Anna Comstock. And I think the book is actually from let me see, I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's from the 30s, but it's still in print. And it's supposed to be a guide for nature educators, but I find it really beautiful too. And she just has very lyrical writing about nature and the way things are connected. So I've definitely sort of, laid out cards and then looked up what I drew in this book. And she has these, sort of what are supposed to be thought-provoking questions for kids, but we're all kids, we're all learning. So they're thought-provoking questions for me too. So she has really, I pulled the chimney swift page up here, and she just sort of says, it sounds straightforward, but it's like, describe how the chimney swifts enter their nesting place at night. Where and how do they perch? Describe the shape of the swift's tail and its use to the bird when roosting. So I think of it almost as sort of, I won't say writing prompts because I haven't done writing specifically off of this, but sort of a thinking prompt and thinking about ways of looking at nature. So, dealing out cards and then sort of picking out pieces that I found meaningful to me and then looking them up and finding out more things about them. So, and the chimney swifts were meaningful in that way to me because, I think this card is about self-imposed restrictions, and the pandemic was certainly that, but it was also for me about finding comfort in those restrictions and finding variety in those restrictions. So, the chimney swifts obviously, probably, I think, live a pretty repetitive life, but they still, thrive in that. So it sort of made me think about like, what is variety and why is that important? And how can I find that same type of variety even in a sort of cyclical, confined moment, basically. So yeah, that's why that card was really important to me, I think.
And this is awesome. Thank you so much. The descriptions and the book, that's so great. I appreciate you jumping on and talking to us about this.
Yeah, of course, happy to.